or before?
I'll be editing to break this up into smaller segments, but
Okay.
yeah. So just wanted to begin with an overview of who's attending that I'm aware of. I see a couple of additional names that didn't show up on the accepted invites, but of course I'm very happy to have as many stakeholders as possible in the presentation. I'll update this list at the end with additional names, and I'll certainly want to reach out to the government of St. Lucia to get the contact email so that we can send the recording to each individual who's participated. And you can certainly feel free to share those recordings with anybody else within the government who may have missed this, but certainly would like to see what was presented.
No problem. I just sent you the emails just a bit ago, so you should get them.
Okay, perfect. Did you want to do introductions on your side? Maybe that would be easier, and that would also give us some insight into the roles and responsibilities of the different people participating.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sherilyn Munoz Gustav, and I am the Chief ICT Officer with the Department of Public Service of the Government of St. Lucia. With me, I have from my office, we have Ms. Sutanya James, who is the Research Officer, who's actually conducted along with Ms. Stella Phillip, who is the ICT Officer. They're actually doing the requirements analysis to inform any decision that we make with regards to an HR management information system. I note we have the Deputy Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Sheila Imbach, she's here. And we have our Director of HR of the Public Service, Mrs. Sharon Carr. I think that's it for now in terms of the solution team. So basically, we are here, of course, as indicated, is to look into the option, look at the solution. We are currently having some discussion in terms of the way forward with regards to our HR management information system. As you're aware, St. Lucia is using SmartStream. And we're therefore, like I said, we have noticed a few shortcomings. We're still in the process of doing the requirements. However, we are looking for some guidance looking forward. And I noticed that Desmond has joined us. So of course, Mr. Desmond Aswell, of most persons will be familiar with him. So thank you.
Thank you. And welcome, Desmond. We're just beginning, so you haven't really missed anything except the introductions. So on our side, I'll do the introductions for Smart Solutions International. So again, many of you may be familiar with SSI. We've been working with the government now since 1997. In fact, I was personally involved in the original implementation of SmartStream on the ground there after the government led the OECS countries in a selection of software platforms that would cover the financials as well as procurement, HR, and payroll. On our side, I'm the managing director here at Smart Solutions, and I have with me the director of professional services and support, Michael Burleson. So Michael heads up both the consulting side and the frontline support side for SmartStream today. We have two product experts of our own, Jacqueline Sejour, who's worked with the government since the original implementation of HR and payroll. And we also have Elizabeth Stevens, who's a senior consultant not only on SmartStream, but on the human capital management solution that you'll be seeing today as well. And together, our team is working with several of the governments in the region, dealing with the migration to the latest and greatest version from Infor, which you'll be seeing today. And hopefully we're going to be able to address some of the gaps that you were speaking about earlier. Additionally, with us from Infor, we've got Claudia Santa Coloma, who is our point of contact at Infor. We work with Claudia managing all of the Infor accounts in the Caribbean and some beyond. Claudia, do you want to do the introductions on behalf of your team?
No, I think each of us wanted to make our own introduction like usually we do. So yeah, I'm the senior account manager and Paul just introduced me. It's perfect. So we work very closely. We talk almost daily. And then, okay, Bonnie, you can introduce yourself now.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name's Bonnie Blair. I'm a solution consultant with Infor. Excited to be here today. Prior to coming to Infor, I've been in various HR roles for the past 10 years or so. So most recently as a recruiter. And I'm thrilled to be able to show you some awesome upgrades today, particularly I'll be showing you a lot of our self-service solutions and a couple of our core HR functions. So that's me. Glad to be here.
Great. Thank you, Bonnie. Mark?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Mark Zamorski here, another solutions consultant here for Infor. I've got about 10 years of experience myself in various different human capital management solutions, from recruiting through through transition management and onboarding, into some of the larger talent management functionality, performance management, compensation in particular. So, as Bonnie mentioned, we're excited to get in today and give you just a high-level preview of what some of the latest and greatest that Infor is able to offer today.
Great, thank you, Mark. And Jay, I know you're joining to ensure everything goes smoothly on behalf of Infor. Did you want to say a couple of words?
Sure. My name is Jay Sanderson. I'm the Director of Solution Consulting. I work with Mark and Bonnie. Got about 20 years of leadership experience in HR, specializing in talent acquisition. I'm just going to be in the background, just making sure everything goes smooth.
Great. Thank you, Jay. So we have a very busy agenda ahead of us, and we're trying as carefully as possible to make sure that we stay to any given topic. I highlight that because, as I mentioned, we're going to take this presentation and we're going to break it into its individual components, pretty much along the lines of what you see in the agenda. That way, we can really give you a library so that you can jump very quickly to any of the topics that we cover today. If, for example, you wanted to specifically take a look at, talent acquisition and how the recruitment's handled, you'll be able to find that in a custom homepage that we'll be designing for you, so that you can go to that topic without having to go through a 2-hour presentation looking for the references. So we'll, make very distinct breaks between each section so that we cover that topic completely and address any questions that you might have around that, and then we'll move on to the next topic. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that you might not have questions that come to you later on about any given topic, and of course, at the very end of the presentation, we can really field any questions on behalf of any area of the system. So, Bonnie, I know this is your agenda. Do you want to speak to any of these components, or should I just go through and highlight the flow?
You're welcome to go through and highlight the flow. I know Mark was going to kick us off, so whenever y'all are ready, okay. I know Mark can start with that overview.
So I think everybody will see that, I'm going to show you a couple more slides with the agenda, but it's a continuous flow. We're really dealing with the foundational aspects and really taking a look at the flow, from the point of hiring straight through. We're going to be talking at different points too about, any questions you might have as to how this is going to integrate into SmartStream payroll as a transitional activity. So that's something we would like to certainly cover towards the end. I want you to be aware that, we have been working with some of the other governments to ensure that that's seamless, including the data migration and any of the other aspects you've got around consulting and implementation. So today, just to be clear, today we want to stay really close to the product. And I'll circle back, with the leadership on the government to cover any of the other questions that fall out of this along those lines. But today it's really going to be very much about the product. So it's the start of a broader discussion. So as we go through, we're going to go into employee self-service. I know that's an important topic. That, of course, also deals with leave management, a thorny issue, I know, in the world of SmartStream. So we'll be covering that as we go through the presentation. And then we'll really be talking about exactly how the managers perform those activities, related to leave of absence, any of the approvals that have to happen, and so on. And then we get into a number of distinct topics, all of which can lead us to broader discussions as we engage with you. But you'll see here that we're hitting some key topics in more of an introductory way, just so you have a sense of the potential for the solution. It is a very big solution. I think it would be probably fair to say that this has probably got easily double the functionality that you see today in the world of HR. So just want you to be aware we're really touching on some of these things, but if we need to circle back at a later point to dig deeper into any one of these, we're happy to do that. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the SCs. Did you say, Bonnie, that Mark was going to start?
Yes, sir. Mark, you want to kick us off?
I will.
I'm
All
just
right.
changing you to presenter right now.
Thank you. All right, let's get this going here. So again, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone, Paul, just want to verify everyone can see my screen.
I certainly can.
Yes, we can. Yes,
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to say, again, good afternoon to everyone. As I'd mentioned, my name is Mark Zamorsky. I'm one of our solution consultants here at Infor. And of course, joining me, Bonnie Blair, as well, to be guiding you through a full, really, what we like to call the hire to retire workflow, or the hire to retire functionality of Cloud Suite Human Capital Management. Now, as Paul had mentioned, Cloud Suite is really the latest and greatest from an Infor perspective. It's what our clients have been moving to across the various different industries, various different platforms that they're operating on here, really kind of from an upgrade perspective, and really getting in and taking advantage of some of the great work that we've done here over the past few years, really, specifically as it relates to HR and human capital management. We'll see really in the middle of everything here, we've got a couple different main functionalities that we're going to be discussing today. Paul had mentioned really a kind of core, really stick close to the product from a core perspective, and that's really what our global HR or GHR kind of different components are here. This is really the backbone from a human capital management perspective about what we're going to be kind of talking about today. This is where our structure lives, from a reporting structure to an organizational structure, your position or manpower control here, and then a host of other topics, everything from keeping your employees safe on the job and making sure they're managing their health appropriately, to I know that leave of absence and absence management being some of the larger topics from that aspect. Additionally, just to the right, you'll see we have a full talent management suite of capabilities here as well. Everything from our recruiting functionality, which we're going to start out with talent acquisition and pre-boarding, through your performance management with goals, learning, development, succession planning, compensation capabilities here as well. And then to kind of further some of that learning capabilities, we do have a very in-depth learning and development functionality. You can see some of those options here, as well as what we like to call an HR service delivery capability here. I like to think of this as really it's case management in a lot of senses. It's making sure that your employees are able to get the answers that they need, either themselves through self-service functionality and a knowledge-based type capability, or if they need to engage someone from the HR side of the organization, be able to actually track that in a more formal process rather than just firing off an email to a generalized inbox, something along those lines here. Really enveloping all this, you'll see at the bottom is Infor OS. This is our Infor operating system. This is really the core technology from a lot of senses, an integration aspect. So integrating HCM here with SmartStream from a payroll perspective, or from some of the different financial solutions you have, as well as our process automation capability. So anything that we would like to say, hey, it's great if when I do something, I can have something else automatically happen. That's how we operate. That's the way things should really work, and kind of would save me a ton of time. That's where process automation and that Infor operating system come into place here. At the top, you'll see as well, we've got a number of other aspects kind of bracketing in really the whole solution here. We're going to talk about Mingle. This is our dashboard and our launch pad for everything that we're going to do from an Infor perspective. We're going to talk about analytics pretty in depth here towards the end of our conversation today. Bonnie is going to show you as well Coleman. Coleman is Infor's version of Alexa or Siri or any of those kind of digital assistant tools that we have. It's great for our employees, especially as we're upgrading potentially to a new system here, to help them find what they need very quickly, very easily. They can literally talk to their phone, talk to their computer, ask a question, and we'll be able to get them into the right place there. The whole solution here, as it exists, everything from the first thing that our employee or our potential employees would see in terms of our careers pages, through the actual physical solution itself and all the functionality there, from self-service to even the admin functionality here, is all mobile optimized, and it's a mobile first solution. So we'll be taking a look at the mobile capabilities of Infor at various points as we go through here. Just know that if the question pops up of, hey, would I be able to do that on my mobile phone or a tablet or something along those lines, the answer is going to be yes. In fact, we wanted to really help to kind of further clarify this. Wanted to make sure that we can see that, we have an individual, Ross, here, and he's got his mobile phone. It's something that he actually used to go ahead and apply for his job, which we're going to walk through here in a second. Then was able to view his paycheck that you'd be able to see in SmartStream Payroll today. He was able to go through and look at the different shift assignments and different capabilities he has there to either pick up shifts or even take time off in a lot of senses. He'll be able to, as you can see, request time off here. That will actually be able to send reminders as well, notifications that things need to be done, such as maybe watching safety videos or something along those lines that he needs to be able to complete his day-to-day job. That will automatically update his credentials, let his manager know. That will be able to be talked about during their performance review or their one-on-one session, whatever it might be. They'll keep it quick, simple, easy, pleasant, and Ross will be able to get back to work. He's not trying to track down anything at a kiosk or anything along those lines. As long as he has a mobile phone of some type or some way to access the internet, he's going to be able to access Infor and do what he needs to do from wherever he actually is here. That being said, enough about kind of Infor and our introduction here of Cloud Suite Human Capital Management. Before we jump into the talent acquisition capabilities, were there just any questions from anyone on the call?
I'm good on my end. I'm not sure if the rest of the team has any questions.
No questions for me so far.
All right, excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over actually to what should be a familiar page for most of the folks on the phone here, I hope, and that's of course the actual government website here for St. Lucia. So I just wanted to start here as an option and just kind of let you know that we aren't going to come in and we don't want to come in here and kind of reinvent the wheel here, right? We want to come in and make what you guys have today, just really have it work in a way that's going to help you all better complete your jobs on a day-to-day basis. And the first aspect of all this and getting these right individuals into the organization and into the different ministries here is going to be hiring the right people. That of course comes from the job opportunities aspect. So the main thing that we're going to look to do here is take the page that exists today, where there's really no kind of jobs or anything listed at this point in time, and look to kind of get a list of all those options, all those availabilities out into the world here for these folks to be able to see and start actually applying for here. And there's a lot of different things that we can do from a recruiting and talent acquisition functionality. I'm going to bring up just a couple examples to give you an idea. Take some of this, take none of this. It's totally up to you what you'd like to be able to see here. But Pilot Flying J is one of our kind of premier customers from an Infor perspective. They operate a number of travel centers. So as you're traveling around, you need to stop, grab a drink, fill up your car with gasoline or petrol, whatever it might be. These are different areas that we can do that. And they have them spread throughout some of the southern United States here. They went through and they were able to really make this careers aspect of their website really focused, very media friendly. They added some videos. They talked about their culture, give you reasons to come work with them here. And then when it's time to actually go ahead and identify the different job opportunities, they had it broken out in a number of different fashions. So here you might want to potentially break this out by the different ministries if you wanted to give people an idea, maybe the type of work that they're doing or the specific options that they have from a job opportunities perspective. I also wanted to bring up Cone Health. Cone Health is one just of our healthcare solutions, or sorry, healthcare partners here at Infor as well. They did a great job. They knew that their population that was applying for positions was a very mobile first, a very kind of mobile driven population here for workers here. So they built out their site and they really had it really with the focus on mobile optimization. So in the same type of aspect, they were able to identify different areas within their business, like you guys might have the different ministries here listed out. So it was really easy for an individual to come in and say, you know what, I'm interested in, whatever the opportunity might be or everything. I can go ahead and identify that from my mobile phone here and then be driven directly to those different options here. We've got similar options here from an Infor perspective. Again, this is just our kind of a demonstration site careers page here. Long and short of it is that we're able to take this and have all those jobs that you might look to fill here listed out on this page, available for individuals to come in and actually apply, regardless of where a job might be advertised as well. If you leverage other non-government website entities, such as any of the job boards or even things like Facebook or anything along those lines, we can have all those applications directed through the solution here and actually directed through a specific process if we wanted to. Now, these different processes that we have the ability to identify them here. We can throw things like your logos or videos and different media in as part of this here. We can see the full job description, which we are able to store on a per position basis within Infor. And again, there's positions I know might vary by ministry here. So each individual position in each individual ministry can have its own unique job description if you'd like. And then we give your candidates here the ability to either express interest and say, I'm interested, maybe not right now, but in the future, and give you an idea of some folks that you might be able to reach out to in the future if you wanted to. They could save this and come back later to identify when they had more time if they wanted to, or they could actually go ahead and actually apply for this position. Now, the actual application process for any of the jobs here is completely configurable. Every single step can be edited or modified to meet the specific needs for that specific job here. We've got quite a few listed out here on this particular application because we like to show what we call the art of the possible. Every and any single possible option that we have, we want to make sure, we want to make sure that we have the ability to kind of let you see those different options exist. This can be strictly limited to upload your resume and answer some questions. If you wanted to even go that far, really it's going to be up to you in terms of how exactly the whole process will look from the candidate's end. So as I go through, I have the ability to review different policies if I wanted to. I'm able to do simple acknowledgement here in terms of checkboxes. If I wanted to, I could, as we briefly discussed, upload my resume or my CV here. What that will actually do is we'll be able to pull information directly from that resume or CV and have it pre-populate the appropriate fields within the actual application steps. So no more uploading a resume or CV and then having to retype everything in again. I'm sure we've all applied for jobs at some point that have done that. Here, we're pulling that core data out into the appropriate field. So my name goes into the name field, my address goes into the address field, and so on here. Again, exactly what information you choose to collect is going to be completely defined by you all, and that might vary job by job, ministry by ministry, really, again, completely up to you. We have the ability here as well to start collecting a number of different pieces of information. Just from a high-level perspective, we can start collecting things like their previous employment history. We can take a look at the different competencies and skills that they might have, the different credentials that they might bring with them, education information, any achievements that they might have here. We eventually, let me get there in a second here, we're going to be able to also ask them screening questions here. Before I get to that point, if we wanted to add some further security, add some further verification around each of these different steps, outside of a checkbox, we have the ability as well to add essentially an electronic signature as part of this. So I'd be able to type my actual name. If for some reason I mistyped or wanted to add some additional information in, it actually won't let me proceed forward unless I actually use the name that was submitted as part of my initial profile application there. So a great kind of security step to make sure that people aren't just randomly clicking through here. Give me one brief sec to get where we need to go. Does this seem like, from a St. Lucia perspective, that you guys would benefit from something like this from an application aspect?
I don't know if the director of HR or any of the persons from HR or DPS wants to chime in based on the functionality, the requirements being done so far. I would say that we're right on track.
Excellent.
Quite interesting in terms of, but of course the team is here and they could feel free to make any additional comment.
Quick question. Do you
Sure.
have the capacity to accept general applications, or do they have to be tied to a specific job that is offered?
No, we can absolutely. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just what happens quite frequently, we get people out of school or qualifications looking for a job, and they just want to send in a general application. And then when we post comes up, we would want to be able to search and pull, okay, these are the people who meet the requirements. Let's get in touch with them.
Sure. No, we absolutely can accept general applications here. Exactly what is included in that application will be defined by you. That might be different than what the per position applications might be. But then the absolutely the full database of resumes is going to be searchable across by individual skills, by achievements, education, credentials, even keywords from their resumes here. So it's really easy to identify those individuals. If you wanted to do some proactive work, you could even put them into different talent pools. So that way, when different opportunities arrive, you have a ready to go list of individuals that you might be able to quickly send an email to and have them formally apply for a position.
Thanks.
Sure. Now that we've got to where we need to go in the application steps here, each job as well, or each position can have what we call screening questions tied to it. So when I'm applying for a position, we might want to put two different kind of levels of requirements on there. Number one, do I, as a candidate, have all the basic minimum requirements for this position? Is it a certain shift that we need individuals to work? Is there going to be, weekend work here? Do they need a college degree to be able to work for you there? Something along those lines. So you can ask those types of questions here. And then depending on individuals' answers, we might be able to, or we might actually automatically disqualify them because they don't meet the minimum requirements. If you need a college degree and they don't have a college degree, that might disqualify them for the position. Again, we don't necessarily need to be able to excuse me, we don't necessarily need to be able to review their information. We can automatically disqualify them, or we can give you the option to review them and even potentially make an exception if you wanted to. In addition to those types of knockout questions, as we call them, the system also gives you the ability to actually rank individuals' answers. So in some instances, there are jobs that, a bachelor's degree is required, where that would be a knockout question there, but a master's degree or higher education in that sense is preferred. If someone says, yes, I have a master's degree in public policy or something along those lines, that might that answer might rank them in a different category class. That'll actually boost their resume. Think of it to the top of the pile, right? They're an individual that we want to identify and be able to reach out to in a very short order here to make sure that they don't hopefully get a job somewhere else in that sense. So you have the ability to ask those types of questions. They can be drop downs like we see here. They can be yes/no questions. They can be open text, whatever you'd like. You can assign those on a per job basis here as well. There also exists the ability to add additional references, of course, here. So if you wanted to add in previous job or references there, as well as other attachments such as cover letters or anything along those lines, all that exists as part of the capabilities here. And as we mentioned, I'm going to give you a quick preview here. All this information, including the full application steps here, are going to be fully mobile optimized. So as I take a look at this on my phone and actually refresh this because it did not render appropriately based on what I did, all this will be able to be done right on my mobile phone and will be able to be kind of a very simple, easy process for me to be able to go through, identify the position, and of course, kind of go through that full application process there. Before we jump into, I guess we kind of just asked questions there, so I want to go ahead, in the interest of time, move in here a little bit. So I'm going to jump into Infor now. Here I'm logged in, first and foremost, to Infor, and the first page I'm brought to is, if we recall from the earlier slide, what we call Mingle. This is our homepage capability from an Infor perspective. We call it Mingle because we use it to intermingle all the different Infor solutions or even non-Infor solutions together in one place to make it really simple and really easy for your users to do whatever it is that they need to do right from one screen or potentially from multiple different screens here if you wanted to. Individuals such as Hugh, who we are logged in as right now, have the ability to have multiple different dashboards. They can have different purposes. They could just be for different points in time during the course of a given year. Here we have one built out specifically for recruiting for our purposes here, but these are fully configurable pages here. I can take any of these boxes, or what we call widgets, move them around to really optimize the way that this page looks and feels for me. I could edit any of these different links or toolbars here. I could even see high-level information such as what individuals do I have at the bottom here who are going to be starting from a new hire perspective this week? Where do they stand with their paperwork? Or how many how many jobs do we have here that we're still waiting for approval on from somewhere in the ministry before they're able to be posted out for the general public to be able to apply for? Even candidates that we need to keep an eye on here. Maybe someone who has done a general application, as Desmond mentioned in the past, and has now done a more formal application. We could call out those individuals or identify them right from here. Really, where we are going to spend a good chunk of our time from a recruiting perspective is going to be within our job requisitions. So those individual positions that we are recruiting for, I can see I have a link right over to my job requisitions right from the right-hand side of my screen there. Here, I'm able to come in and now take a look at all my specific requisitions here. Now, someone like Hugh here is a man of many, many talents. He, as most individuals in HR tend to, has many different roles that he has to play within the organization. So here he's logged in as is in his recruiter role. We could also see he's got access into our absence management capability, compensation information, development planning. He, of course, is an employee as well, so he needs to be able to see his paycheck and his request time off for himself for vacations or anything along those lines. Bonnie's going to get in and show you that view a little bit later here. But right now, he's logged in as a recruiter, and that really brings to light for him really the key functionality that he needs as a recruiter. Individuals in that candidate pool that Desmond had mentioned there, those general applications or past applications for positions that did not get hired, we still want to keep those individuals handy. This way, if the opportunity arises in the future, we have the ability to fall back on them and maybe see if someone there is a good fit for the job. Of course, see things like requisitions and adding candidates in manually. If someone happens to drop a resume on our desk, we have the ability to go ahead and manually add that person in here. But for right now, we're going to take a look at our actual job requisitions here. So right now we have one for an event marketing specialist here. We can see general information about the job. We have, again, these widgets that we are able to see on our home screen here for this particular position. We can see specific candidates that we might, that have recently come to pass and applied for this job. We're able to see where they came from as well. I mentioned that we have the ability to be able to post out jobs outside of just your kind of the government website there to other avenues such as job boards. You have the ability to get them posted from within the Infor solution here. We can also then track how many of the candidates for a particular job came from that actual posting, and we're able to qualify that with, of course, the cost to post that out. So we can start getting some of those cost per hire, cost to fill metrics in from a recruiting perspective here as well. We'll see those over here on the right side. We're able to see any notes from either the manager or the kind of or the director of that particular ministry or that particular department or team there here as well, what they're looking for. We also can see information about interviews. Who is interviewing for this job today? In today's world, a lot of individuals we've seen have done online or panel type interviews through a tool similar to WebEx or Zoom or anything along those lines. So we can put the details of all that in the actual solution here. This way we can send that information out, and there's really a single repository for that. Should, Jay, for example, be conducting an interview today and he is sick and someone needs to fill in, we've got that information stored within the solution. We could very easily pass that to someone else to fill in for him in certain cases like that. We can see here as well, each job also is going to have a workflow associated to it. These are, of course, the steps that it takes to actually be hired for a role here. Now, similar to our application, there exists the ability to have multiple different workflows within this solution here. So different jobs might require different steps. If we're looking for someone to head up an entire ministry, for example, there might be a very different steps in the recruiting process here than someone coming in as an intern or fresh out of school, something along those lines. So you have the ability for there to be many different workflows. Again, they can be tied to individual position requisitions as well. So we can ensure that as people apply, they're completing the appropriate application for that job, and then they're going through the appropriate steps from a hiring perspective, again, to ensure that it's not 30 different interviews or something like that for a entry-level position, unless, of course, that's what you are all looking to have done. We can see, based on numbers here, how many people are in each different step that we have. We can very easily identify them. We can view their resume or CV information here. We can download a copy for ourselves, Or we could actually jump right into their actual profile within Infor here and be able to see a version of that resume right on screen for us here. We never have to actually leave the solution here. So let me get rid of my down here. I can see some, his resume here that we had applied for. I can see some basic information about the candidate here as well over on the left-hand side, things like his score for those different questions that he had answered here as well. I'm able to see, again, a number of different pieces of information about his profile also here. Depending on what is important to, again, the organization, we'll be able to see that information displayed here and make it very easily available to kind of access what I need as I'm making decisions. Now, as we're reviewing resumes, I have options right here in terms of icons on the left-hand side. I could go ahead and reject this individual here, say, hey, this is not a good fit for this job. I could maybe kind of hold off and say, I'm not sure what I want to do yet here. I could go ahead and move them forward to whatever the next logical step is here in the workflow. So if after we review their resume, we send them to the manager or whoever's managing their recruitment from a kind of a from the hiring manager's perspective, that could be the next step. We could automatically send that information right to that step. Or if we know that we want to bring them in for a more in-depth interview, I could look to choose to even skip over multiple steps in my recruiting workflow, should I have the appropriate security permissions to be able to get to where I need to go from that aspect. So a lot of options that you have here to first and foremost view information on the candidates that come in and have applied for the positions, as well as move them through all the different steps in our recruiting workflow here. That's going to include being able to schedule interviews, as we talked about just a moment ago here, and even go through and actually extend offers as part of the solution here. So we can go in and define our offer details here in terms of the compensation, any additional benefit type packages that they might receive, any of the additional perks for a particular job that they might have there. We're able to identify that information, even route that for approval. So if someone needs to sign off on the different details that we're offering a candidate here, we have the ability for that to automatically be routed to the appropriate person based on whatever the requirements are for that actual position. Those individuals then can actually view that information digitally. They'll be able to get something like a email here where they get a nice offer of employment. They'll be able to view a copy of that actual offer here. They'll be able to review the details of that actual offer. And then they'll be able to actually come in here. Pardon me one second. They'll be able to actually come in here. There we go. And actually be able to review that offer details right from the same page that they applied for the job from. So here we're logged in already as Barry. We got this email from myself. So we got this email here. I clicked on the option to review my offer. It brought me right to my application page here. And now I can actually go ahead and begin to review my offer at this point in time. So I can see that same information here that I would have in terms of the overall attachment. Then I can electronically sign this information really right from here. Upon doing so, I actually then can begin what we call pre-boarding. I like to think of this as the calm before the storm of a new hire. So any of those very simple actions that we want to allow someone to complete, verifying their information, et cetera, we're able to do as part of the application and part of the recruiting process here. They don't have to actually have a formal login in terms of, a Government of St. Lucia email address to be able to access the system at this point. They're still a candidate, but we're looking to have them complete things in advance. They're able to access this information, again, through a standard web browser here. They could go ahead and come in and start completing some different pieces of information before they actually start on their first day here. So whatever those capabilities are, we'll be able to define that and, of course, send that information out. And just like everything else, that might vary depending on the actual position, depending on ministry it's a part of. Really, it's going to be up to you how that works. Before we move on here, I did want to touch on Desmond's point from earlier, is that we do have the ability here as well to, of course, be able to do some searching and take a look at individuals who have come across and submitted their resume or their application from a general perspective. So we can see there is a full candidate pool, as we call them here. We're able to see a list or a mix here of external individuals, as well as even internal people that currently are employed by the government, to be able to kind of see their profiles from within here. We're able to see if they've applied for jobs, have they gone on any interviews, how do they enter into the system here, even if there were any general salary expectations that they've identified. We're able to see that kind of information. Great thing here is that these fields that we're able to see, these are fully configurable. So if that salary expectation is not important or not something that we want to see as part of our search screen, we can absolutely remove that here. Similar to what we were talking about earlier, we have a lot of options to actually search across this full pool of individuals. We could search by their location here. Again, so depending on how far the commute would be for them to come into the office, we could search on specific competencies and skills, education information, credentials that they might have. If we did take that proactive step, we could tag them here, as I mentioned, someone that is articulate or someone that would be a great fit for management or in one of our accounting for our finance ministry, something along those lines. I'd be able to identify them in advance. Then I could just search across everyone that I've quote unquote tagged earlier here to find that short, quick list of people that I want to reach out to about a new opportunity should something meet any of those requirements here. I also have the ability to just do a general keyword search across everyone's resume at this point in time as well. So we got Chelsea, who's applied a number of times here. But again, you have the ability just to do that general keyword search here as well to be able to identify people with that information and, of course, their actual resume kind of content there as well. Since we kind of have taken our candidate from the application stage, talked about working them through the different recruiting steps in the process there, including the offer details, and we got into some of the pre-boarding, that's going to really wrap up our talent acquisition portion here. Were there any questions from the team before we move into some of the transition management or onboarding capabilities? I'll take silence as a no, but if I do stand corrected, please someone do feel at any point to chime in and let me know. Or you can also put some questions in the chat and we'll be able to address those as we come across them here as well. So now that we've taken an individual and they've applied, they've accepted the offer, and they've begun, they've started on their first day, what does the world look like for them now as a new hire within the organization? And that's where they are now, again, going to log in to Infor, into Mingle on our homepage here for the very first time. They'll be able to be initially delivered a homepage here. One of the great capabilities of homepages is that we can assign them out from an administrative perspective to individuals. So every time we have a new individual come on board and join one of our ministries, we can assign them the appropriate homepages here. That way they can see all information relevant to them. Here specifically, we're talking about their welcome into the organization and kind of giving them maybe some nice little some videos, a nice little welcome message here. They can view their information in terms of their profile details. And then most importantly, they're able to go through and actually start completing the different activities that we need them to complete from the very beginning. So I can go ahead and just click into my list here. We notice that it is a list. We have the ability here to assign multiple different packets or packages of information that we need completed depending on a variety of different factors. It could be based on the ministry. It could be based on the position. It could be based on their either role as a manager or not as a manager. There could be a number of different options that we have that are going to define exactly what information that's going to be requested from us. We don't need to have individual, what we call programs for each and every one of those potential options here. As long as we can kind of create some different some different kind of base capabilities, we can build really a unique program or a unique process here for each individual that comes on board, just dependent on those various number of different pieces of information. Here we have some pieces of information to review. First and foremost, we're looking at our personal information form. So further verifying information that we had updated as part of our resume earlier on and the application process earlier on there. It might have been a while. Maybe some different things have changed. Maybe we've gotten married. Maybe we've changed our address from when we initially applied for that position. It's important to have this information verified and validated by our employee at this point, because we're going to use the information that they've signed off on here and essentially validated to further complete and pre-populate any other documentation that they need to complete within the actual solution here. One other thing to note here as well, we'll notice some of these options are grayed out. And if I hover my mouse over it here, you'll see that it actually is going to give me a pop-up tooltip here that says, hey, this depends on the personal information form being completed. So you have the ability to set a strict and specific order if you wanted to as part of this process as well to ensure people are completing things in the appropriate order, in the appropriate timeframes here as well. Any of these actions, if they're not completed within a certain time frame, and that will be able to be defined on a per task action here. They'll be able to receive notifications either on their mobile device through Infor Go, which Bonnie's going to talk about in a couple minutes here, through email. Their managers will be able to get notifications through email and through kind of a push notification on their mobile phone here as well. So there's a lot of eyes that are able to be focused on them should they forget or not complete something during the course of their new hire experience here. Again, a lot of different options that they have. As we can see, they can update their information. They can sign off on policies and procedures. Anything that's unique as well, we are able to build those as part of the solution here. This way we could digitize all your existing hard copy paperwork here, bring that into the solution, and then really have a digital file on all these individuals, of course, with very strict and appropriate security permissions installed. That way, not everyone can just go and see anyone's, banking information here. We'll be able to put security around that to ensure that only people with the appropriate access are able to see that documentation and those specific fields of information within the system here. Outside of assigning information to our new hire here, so to the actual person that's joining the organization, we can also assign administrative tasks as part of this. So if there are things that need to be done, maybe assigning a parking pass or having a building access badge or something along those lines created for an individual when they come on board. If that's something that needs to take place internally, we can assign those tasks out via email here as well to those individuals, and they can, of course, report back when they've completed that action. We'll be able to have a full essential checklist for administration as well as the new hires manager to be able to see to make sure that they are successful in coming on board whatever ministry they're joining within the government here. Any questions on the onboarding or transition management capabilities of Infor at this point?
No questions from me.
Okay, excellent. That being said, that actually brings us now to. Was there a question? I'm sorry. Maybe not. From our perspective here, that brings us really to our day in the life from an actual employee's perspective. I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen at this point in time. I'm going to pass control over to my colleague, Bonnie Blair. And Bonnie, let me see if I have to make you a host here. Here we go. Bonnie is going to be able to walk us through now some of the employee self-service capabilities here that our employees and, of course, our managers are going to be able to complete here as well. So, Bonnie, I'll pass the quote-unquote ball to you. I'll let you take it away.
Okay, all right, I'm working on sharing my screen here. All right. My WebEx is going a little slow here, so bear with me. Can you all see Matthew there on the screen?
Not yet. It's still taking its time.
Okay. We'll get there.
Now.
Again.
Okay, perfect. And let me get this out of here. Okay. So I'm sharing my screen to introduce you to Matthew. Matthew is our actor that I'll be using for the next 15 minutes or so to demonstrate our employee solution. And from today, we're going to cover the employee profile, employee task recognition, some time off requests. I'll see all this from a mobile perspective using, of course, Matthew's login. So what I'm going to do now is share my phone screen. This is my actual cell phone. So if somebody calls, just bear with me. See if I can get that a little bigger. So I like to always set the scene a little bit just to help you imagine our solutions in real life. So let's imagine Matthew's not actually at work right now. Instead, he's taking his car to get the oil change. He's waiting in the lobby. And all he has is his cell phone. And of course, a bunch of old dusty magazines in front of him on the coffee table. So he decides that while he's waiting on his car, he's going to Now, Infor is a container app that allows Matthew to access any Infor solution he would normally have access to. You see a list here, except from a mobile device. And it doesn't matter if he has an iPhone or an Android or is using an iPad, any mobile device will work. So right off the bat, he can access his homepage. With one tap, he's at his mobile self-service homepage. And Mark showed you this a little bit, but you can think of a homepage as kind of a one-stop shop. So Matthew only has to log in here to his homepage, and he can quickly get to any part of the Infor solution he would normally have access to, or even any outside program he might use, or even websites that he commonly visits. So Matthew has configured his homepage to show the uses, things he wants to see. He has a widget as a snapshot and a link. So a perfect example is this paycheck widget. It's a snapshot of his most recent paycheck and a link to expand into more information. And of course, I'm going to show you guys that one in a few minutes because it's a popular one. But widgets provide a visually beautiful way for employees to get to what they need to quickly. Now, the first thing Matthew sees here is his profile, which reminds him that recently phone number needs to update that information in his profile. So besides the ability to change his personal information here, his profile gives him access to all kinds of important information. As you can see, he could update his profile picture here with for his boss. He can access his boss's information here. Let's say it's his manager. He can call her here. Then he can edit his information. So his address, his phone number, right here is where he could access any of that information. Okay. So that's quick and easy for him. There's also some more information, some important dates. See contact here? He can even access his bank information, where his paycheck is going. And he can edit that all here from his phone. And he doesn't have to call HR to do any of that. Now, recently, Matthew just completed a course in HR at the local college. He knows the company's for that sense, but he doesn't if he's been reimbursed for that class. Give you an entire history of his pay at the company. My phone is just a couple seconds behind my actual phone. So with this part of the app, he can access all of his pay at the history. It'll give some breakdowns, some visuals. Let me clear my cache here, see if that helps. All right, so here's his paychecks. Still seeing my phone screen?
Yes, we're seeing it.
This app
It's just
is
that to load up.
Yeah, it's the projector app that's projecting my phone onto the screen. It's just a hair behind what I'm actually doing. So here's a break. He can see some visuals. He can break down his deductions and taxes. He can even view here. So going to show you guys his pay stub. He could even print it here. Really quick, really easy, really intuitive. Back at this page, Matthew's going to take this opportunity to ask about that reimbursement. Wasn't reimbursed for that. So here with Employee Ask, Matthew can submit cases to get his HR. here is where he could create that question, and based on the topic that he selects, it will want his question to be appropriate. So he's going to ask what is the policy for tuition reimbursement? Submit that. Created a ticket, it created that case. Now let's just, it's a few hours later, and someone in HR will get an email, a notification, info, even a text message if he's opted for text messages with the answer. So let's open up. And here he can see the answer to his question, the resolution from HR, and I'm still waiting on this. There it is. And he can even open up an attachment. So HR decided to go ahead and include the policy so that he can just open up the policy and read the attachment to answer his question. So Matthew didn't have to spend any time on hold with HR for this process. Really gave him a lot of autonomy, being able to do this himself. So moving down, is that a rave recently to him. Now, a rave is an internal employee recognition program. So anyone in the organization can write a rave about Matthew, and we see what Leo wrote about him here. And of course, Matthew can write a rave about anyone else as well. So besides being a great tool for employee engagement, raves can also be connected to an employee's performance evaluation, and we'll see that in a little bit. So Matthew's really glad that his boss is going to see what Leo said about him. And then he decides, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and put in a rave about one of my coworkers who really helped me out. And he can do that right here from his home screen. Leon really helped me out in a pinch. And he can submit that here. Doesn't even have to leave his homepage for that. So next, Matthew sees that HR has funneled an employee pulse survey to him. Now, a pulse survey is a quick way for employers to get a feel for how their employees are doing and to be able to get actionable results. So Matthew's still waiting on his car. He decides to go ahead and fill some of these out. Says, do you believe we live authentically by our organizational values? He thinks so. He fills that out. And he can answer as many questions as he wants to here. He doesn't even have to leave his homepage to do that. And then lastly, Matthew needs to make sure he submits his time off request. He's going to take a long weekend trip to celebrate his coursework that he's finished. So he's taken off a few days. He can do that request right here from his homepage. And the first thing he's greeted with is some helpful information. So here are his plans right here. Now, you as an organization might have sick time versus vacation time versus different types of leave. Whatever plans your organization has, we can support it. So Matthew's going to choose his plan. He sees right here he's got 200 hours available. So he knows exactly how much time he can and can't take off. He's going to select the days right here on the calendar that he wants to take off. And then he's going to submit that request. So that is a super easy, super intuitive process for Matthew. He really loves that process because it eliminates the need for paper, you know, having to keep track of a piece of paper and chase it down and get his boss to sign it. So this routes straight to his boss, which we'll see in a little bit, for her to approve. So with just 15 minutes and a cell phone, Matthew was able to accomplish quite a bit. He changed his personal information, he viewed his paycheck, he submitted a question to HR, participated in some employee recognition and surveys, and he requested time off, all through a centralized, modern, and intuitive self-service solution. Plus, being able to do all that himself, it took a big administrative burden off of HR. So let's pause for a minute here before we move on to manager self-service. Is there anything I can clarify, or does anybody have any questions?
I noticed you guys hours. Is it possible to do days or how work days versus calendar days, that sort of stuff?
When requesting time off?
Yeah, for leave entitlement. Are there different ways of setting it up?
Absolutely. It's configurable to fit whatever your plan needs are. So somebody could request as little as 2 hours. They could request as many as, weeks or months at a time. So that's definitely something that we're able to do. And I'm also going to show a little bit more about leave of absence from the manager view as well.
Everything is based on hours, or we can change it to days?
Oh, it can be changed to days. Absolutely.
We have this thing where people get different amounts of leave depending on their position and also on their length of service. Can we pre-program that, or how do we do that? Like if you've been 0 to 3 years, you're entitled to X number of days vacation, and 3 to 7 years, Y.
Absolutely. So the system supports being able to set up rules based on a person's status or based on a group that a person's in. So you would be able to set up all those different types of rules. Does that help answer your question?
Thanks.
Perfect. Anything else?
HR, any other questions?
I have a question, but I could go into this in a little more detail. I was wondering about the various types of leave. Different types of leave. Would it accommodate that? But then I'm suspecting you would go into more detail later on the leave part of it.
Yeah, I'm going to open up leave of absence from the manager view. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll show you that, and then if you want to go in a little deeper, we can either do that if we have time, or definitely set up some additional time. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to manager self-service. We've seen self-service from an employee's view. Let's take a look at a manager self-service homepage, and this time from the perspective of Lindsay, who is who you're looking at. She's Matthew's manager. And in this section of the demo, which should last about 5 or 10 minutes, we'll see approving time off, some quick actions for managers, and a manager's view of her staff. So while everything you see moving forward is also viewable on a mobile device, thanks to Infor.'s responsive design, which renders any content to a mobile screen, this time we're going to take a look at the functionality from a desktop view. So right now, Lindsay is in between meetings. She's got a few minutes to knock off some things off her to-do list. So Lindsay's going to log into her homepage, her manager self-service homepage. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so as you can see, this is branded to reflect her company's colors and logo. And her homepage is a little different from the ones you've seen before. It's different from Matthew's. Of course, it's got the banner up there with the video. And it's got different widgets. So homepages can be configured according to a person's security role. And as for the widgets on Lindsay's homepage, she uses them as kind of a to-do list, a virtual to-do list. So her first to-do is to approve her team's time off. So Lindsay can quickly see these requests right here. She can even approve them or deny them right from here. And if she wants a little bit more of a comprehensive view, she can check out this calendar view, which gives her a whole picture of her staffing for her staff's leaves and PTO. So these are ones that still have to be approved. They're color-coded here. These are approved, these are unapproved. So this gives her a more holistic view of her staff's time off schedules. Now, like we mentioned, Lindsay's also got a tool for tracking and managing staff leaves. So here's some of that information about leaves. Now here she can easily see who still has pending requests, whose requests have been approved. She can also see who's currently on leave here, and of course a history of leaves. Now she can also, let me see here, get this window out of here. She can also, of course, create a leave for her employee. Like, obviously, if somebody gets in an accident or has an emergency surgery, they're not going to be able to request that leave themselves. So Lindsay could come in here and add a leave for her employee. She can put in their employee number, the different types, and the dates. So that's where she would create that leave. Now this will be housed, this leave of absence record will be housed here, as well as in the employee record. So Lindsay's attention moves over to the manager navigator. This is one of her favorite widgets. Obviously, it's the quickest way to get a phone number. Here's Matthew's right off the bat, but if she wanted to search for somebody else, she could type in a name and find that. The best part is she can initiate actions directly from this screen. So she just got notification that one of her employees is transferring to another ministry. So she decides to go ahead and kick off that workflow. Now, Lindsay loves this feature. It's a quick, convenient, and easy way to initiate actions and just get that ball rolling. So she's going to put in the effective date. And you know what? Hilda actually started working in this other area about 2 weeks ago. So she's going to backdate that. And the beauty of the effective date is that any action in the system can be effective dated in the past or in the future. And then, of course, Lindsay's going to select what area she's going to, and she can go ahead and submit that for that workflow to get started. So the transfer has been initiated. Quick and easy. Now for the activities widget. This is the gateway to where Lindsay spends a lot of her time. She's configured a list of her most commonly used links here. And My Staff is the quickest, easiest way for her to get an overall picture of her entire staff. So their information, their needs, pretty much anything she needs to know about them. So let's kind of orient to what we're looking at. First of all, this menu on the left contains all the functionality Lindsay needs for her job as a manager. So everything from staff info to goals, performance evaluations, absences, engagement, you name it, Lindsay can access it here. I'm going to get rid of that menu to give us a little bit more space, but right now Lindsay's looking at all about Matthew. We know this because he's highlighted in blue here, and to the right, all of these widgets, all these boxes going down the screen are all about Matthew. So she has a little sneak peek at some basics about him, some contact information, goals, compensation, notes, and then she can dive in deeper into any of those that she wants to. So she's going to dive into his full profile. And here's Matthew's full profile. It covers all these different areas going down the left. So everything that we've seen about Matthew, everything that we're about to see about Matthew will all be located here, housed here in this employee record. I won't go through all these tabs, but just want to click on a couple just to show you what they look like. Now, there's no need for Lindsay, the manager, to open up 12 different systems about, his goals, and then another one for employee relations, and another one for his phone number. Everything's in one place. And this also allows really easy access for reporting, which Mark's going to jump into in a little bit. What's so dynamic about this solution, though, is the security roles. So Lindsay's looking at this from a manager view. Let's look at what Matthew sees as an employee. We're going to take a side-by-side comparison. So give me a minute here, and I'm actually going to drag Matthew's screen over, and we're going to compare. So here's Matthew's screen. And here's Lindsay's screen. So you can see Lindsay's got a lot more access than Matthew. Like, for instance, Matthew's not going to have access to, say, his employee relations, his disciplinary actions. Lindsay's going to have access to that, Matthew's not. So all this information is configurable. Every role is configurable. So you can decide who sees what down to the field level. So I'm going to get rid of Matthew's screen here. Now, speaking of employee relations, Infor has a dynamic solution to support employee discipline, grievances, and other employee relations. So right away, Lindsay is greeted with a handy calendar view to pinpoint when things are happening. In this particular instance, she's going to look up Billy Ewing because she's had some repeat offenses. Now, Lindsay can toggle through the calendars to see when things are happening. She also has an option for a list view. So looking at this list here, it's obvious to see that Billy's leaving early, Billy left early, Billy left early. She's leaving early about once a month at the beginning of the month. So this is helpful for Lindsay to help identify any trends. Maybe it's a recurring appointment, maybe it's a childcare issue, maybe it's something that can be addressed and resolved. But in any case, Lindsay's got to create an official written warning because that's the policy after 3 occurrences. So opening up this written warning, it's already populated. I didn't want you guys to have to watch me type, but Lindsay has gone ahead and filled out all the information here, the date that it happened, the details, and she coded it to a certain category. Now, based on a category that the manager codes it, it could be configured to communicate to payroll to deduct a portion of the person's pay in accordance to whatever your policies are. Now, we all know that not all employee relations are bad. So Lindsay likes to be able to check out any notes that have been put in about a person. So a note could be something positive. There's also opportunity to document coaching opportunities as well as employee grievances. So all these features provide the manager with a well-rounded view of what's really going on with the employee. And all this information resides within the employee profile that we saw in that last section, which is really important because let's say that Billy transfers to a different ministry. Let's say she goes down to part-time. Let's say, you know, she makes some kind of job change. Whatever it is, all this information will follow her in her profile. Back at her homepage. Now, in the world of COVID, Lindsay utilizes the health and safety component a little bit more than usual. So she's got a shortcut to it right from her homepage. And here she can view safety reports. She's going to open up this report submitted by Tracy. There was a possible COVID exposure here. And Lindsay can see all the details. Of course, she can see the date and all that. She can read a detailed description. She can see what location was affected. She could even see attachments. Maybe there's a picture of something that happened. Now, Lindsay can also take action here. She could assign an investigator. Let's say she needs to send a safety officer over to that site to dig in a little bit deeper to what happened. She could do that here. Maybe she could code it in review. Maybe there's nothing else that needs to be done. She can close this observation. So the beauty of that functionality is that nothing's going to be reported as an official incident until the proper person confirms it as an incident. So every observation that's submitted can be reviewed before it hits any kind of incident report. And now the same thing can be done with near misses and even safe behaviors. Now with safety profiles, here Lindsay can search by employee. Maybe there's an employee that's had several incidents and she wants to see what's going on. So here we can see that Gabriel has 3 instances of slipping and falling. So Lindsay's thinking, you know, maybe the route he takes has a slippery spot. Maybe that needs some attention. And of course, another huge benefit is that all this information is stored in the employee record. So if Gabriel goes elsewhere and within the organization, all this goes with him. And of course, Lindsay has the opportunity and the ability to report an incident or a near miss herself. And she also has access to reports for compliance purposes. So next on Lindsay's to-do list, she's going to focus in on her staff's development, which she has an entire tool dedicated to on her homepage. A little more real estate here. Now here, Lindsay can access everything pertaining to her employees' development and learning. Now here we've landed on Matthew's development profile. We know this because he's highlighted in blue. Everything to the right is all about Matthew. So we're looking at his goals, his activities. Activities are like courses or classes. They can be online or in person. Checklists, development plans, certifications. Development plans, by the way, are groups of activities. They're all centered around a certain topic. So she can track all different kinds of things here, continuing education. She can take a look at his fit analysis, which Mark is going to dive into in a little bit. So here, Lindsay has everything she needs to help Matthew reach his potential at the company. So looking at Matthew's development plan, she realizes that he's supposed to have the new development plan about Microsoft Office. In fact, her entire staff is supposed to have that. So she can actually mass assign enrollment to a development plan. So she can assign something to her entire staff, and she can choose here exactly who she wants it to go to. In this case, she wants it to her direct reports. Now, if she just wanted to assign it to maybe 3 or 4 employees or a handful of specific employees, she could select this option here and just choose those specific people. She could assign it to only a certain position or maybe only a certain location. So she can tailor it however she needs to. And she's going to assign that Microsoft Office training. She's, of course, going to put a due date. And she's going to submit that. So she has successfully mass assigned that development plan in just a matter of seconds. So back at her homepage, on the top of every manager's priority list is staff performance and engagement, of course. So this engagement dashboard looks familiar. It's got the same look and feel as some of the other pages we've looked at, but this shows continuous performance engagement. So the idea here is that instead of checking in with an employee's performance like once a year, this helps managers track how the employee is doing all throughout the year in little bite-sized pieces. So let's break down what you're seeing on the screen here. First are check-ins. Now these check-ins are just notes on those informal conversations that Lindsay has with Matthew throughout the year. Otherwise, how in the world is she ever going to remember them? Next, she can track accomplishments, challenges, tasks. Here are all those raves that Matthew received. We saw those in Infor from the perspective of the employee. She can also see raves that Matthew has submitted. So here's the one that he submitted just a few minutes ago. And then here's the pulse surveys, those little questions that Matthew was filling out on his homepage. Here's all of the responses that he's put throughout the year. And here, Lindsay even has the opportunity to fill out a pulse survey for Matthew. So let's say Matthew and Lindsay are on the phone, or let's say Matthew's sitting in front of her in the office. She can ask, 1 or 2 or 3 of these questions and actually record it here. Okay, so this functionality really gives Lindsay a more holistic view of the employee's performance, instead of leaving it all up to, a 1-hour meeting once a year with the employee. So next, Lindsay is going to dive into Matthew's more formal annual performance review. And to do this, she's going to use Infor's digital assistant, Coleman, because quite honestly, she only accesses this part about once a year. She doesn't really remember how to get there all the time. So she's going to type it in, and Coleman, the digital assistant, will take her to exactly the page that she needs to be on. So here's Lindsay's appraisals. She's, of course, going to work on Matthew's. And here we're going to see some of those more traditional performance review ideas married together with the continuous performance engagement we saw in the last screen. So, of course, it's going to kick off with some core values of the company, which would be configured to any messaging your organization wants, and then moves on to some skills and competencies. Now, these questions here pertain specifically to Matthew and his job. If this was somebody else, maybe a nurse or something, the questions would be different according to whatever position they have. Okay. Here are those pulse survey questions all brought together here. Here are Matthew's goals. So here in this screen, Lindsay can complete the goal for him or mark it as complete for him, or she can rate him. Maybe he's surpassed this goal, maybe he's not reached it at all. So she can rate him right here in the screen. In the next tab, Lindsay she can set goals like this for the next year. And to help keep goals as a priority for organizations, this feature of setting goals, it can be made to be required in order to complete an appraisal. So for instance, Lindsay couldn't move forward. She couldn't submit this until she establishes some goals for Matthew for 2021. Here are some of those learning activities we saw earlier. So this appraisal is so holistic, it combines those traditional elements with the continuous performance and even overlays completed learning activities that relate to Matthew's goals and development. Ultimately, of course, this all lives in the employee record so that wherever Matthew ends up going within the organization or whatever manager he works for, this information goes with them. So we have just scratched the surface of how comprehensive this solution is. We've seen employee relations, health and safety. We touched on learning and development. We saw some dynamic performance and engagement functionality. And from here, Mark's going to continue with the demonstration. He's going to talk more about succession, jobs and positions, and a little bit more. So Mark, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Mark, I can't hear you if you're speaking.
I quintuple muted myself, as is too often nowadays. Thank you, Jay. So thank you, Bonnie, for kind of walking us through the different self-service capabilities and some of the different aspects our managers are able to take care of, as well as our employees here. I want to kind of bring us back a little bit more from an administrative perspective. I know that we had spoken initially during really the first slide that I showed outside of Bonnie and my picture here. We talked about the different silos that human capital management from Infor really brings to the table here. And the first thing we talked about was the structure side of the house here. So really where our structure lives, it really all starts with the actual jobs and positions. And in our exploration and in our understanding here, we understand there are, again, typically many different jobs, many different positions within the entire course of the government here. They all line up under various different ministries that are here. We wanted just to show you that we absolutely can take all that information that you guys have today and give it a home in a lot of senses. So I want to start here with some of our, we call it setup here, but I'm going to start here talking a little bit about jobs. I like to take and think about the hierarchy here as it relates to jobs and positions and structure here from a pyramid perspective. At the top, really, we have kind of an organization from the highest level, so the overall government of St. Lucia. And as we continue down kind of on different levels of the hierarchy there, we have the different ministries, then the different departments, the different teams, the different subsets or project groups or whatever they might be. All those different organizational components are comprised of, number one, essentially jobs and positions. Now, jobs are our way of coding information to kind of give some uniformity across, again, it could be across a team, it could be across multiple different positions. It really will depend on how you want to leverage that information. So here we have a number of jobs. We have a number of associates here. Thing with jobs is there are, again, number of jobs here. There are also many positions that fall into a job, and we'll take a look at that in just a brief second here. But we have these kind of identifiers of jobs here, and we can start seeing some information. I think, Desmond, you had brought this up earlier here, but you had asked, was there a way to tie in certain types of plans to a specific position or to a specific, job there? And again, there might be some different rules there regarding tenure and a number of different aspects, but really, from an Infor perspective, this is where we're going to start to complete all those actions. We can see we have some information here, and it's going to be things like, for example, initially a job description. anytime we post an associate job, we want to make sure that there's a uniform job description assigned to it. And here is where that information would be housed. Same thing with the compensation information here. We have a certain structure. Is it an hourly position? Is it a monthly position? Do we want to see the annualized salary here? Are there certain steps or grades from a compensation perspective that we want to identify or start people at when they initially are hired for this position here? Any other classifications in terms of from a reporting perspective, job families or categories? We're able to identify that information here. As we continue on here, we can see a general summary. So when we talk about what is an associate, we can define exactly what associate means, exactly what an assistant means from that larger perspective. Then, as we have associates for our tourism department and associates in the Ministry of Health and other areas there, we can now kind of have that uniform. Associate means that this is kind of a core group of requirements here. We can see some of that responsibilities that might kind of fall into them from this aspect here. You can see things different attributes here from a country perspective, but here we can also see things like qualifications. Are there certain competencies that we feel that everyone who is an associate or an analyst or an assistant or any of the other A jobs I can think of here, any of those jobs, are there certain kind of core or common competencies, things like communication and professionalism? Are there certain skills like time management? Again, from a traditional corporate perspective, from the office perspective, some of these might be interchangeable. But as we start getting out into some hard skills, maybe people out for your public works doing road construction or anything along those lines, are there certain skills or certifications that they need to operate different machinery? We're able to define that information right from here. This way, as we go through and access a number of different things, from the application steps to career paths to potential reasons for pay increases, we have the ability to view this information, see how our individual employees, or as we call them, resources, line up against what our required qualifications are here, and then see if it's something that we're able to kind of proceed with at this point in time. So then this covers everything here from, again, our responsibilities and detail information here to the working conditions, career paths, as I mentioned. So what jobs can I go to from here? What jobs would I kind of feed into? Again, we see this a lot at the manager level and above. And then, of course, as I mentioned just a moment ago, again, there are a number of positions. So a job of an associate, it actually means a number of different things from the physical job title or position title that your employees have. So we want to take a look in here. We can see that there are some key information here. We can identify things like key positions or something like that, as we see with security officer. As we take a look at things like at the HR administrator position here, we're actually now taking it a step deeper. Again, we're taking all that information from the job level. We're now kind of cascading that down. Just like we would cascade goals, maybe from a ministry level or a department level or a team level down, we're able to cascade responsibilities, qualifications, different behaviors. We're able to cascade that information down. But now we're able to further personalize that information. So there might be the same job across multiple different ministries within the government of St. Lucia, but each position, as it relates to your, transportation or health or public works or tourism or whatever it might be, they all might have, unique requirements there. That's okay. We can utilize the solution to really create a standard here, and then allow each of those different ministries, each of those different teams to really allow those unique capabilities to shine as part of their requirements here. So similar look and feel from a position level. We're able to see information here. We're able to tie it again back to the actual job here. We can upload more in-depth descriptions. We could see a more detailed summary. Be able to see more in-depth compensation information, really what we're going to extend as part of a job offer as part of here. So when we go through that offer process, we did first thing when we went through our recruiting capabilities, what does that offered salary, that offered information look like? We're able to see that information right here. We've tied that to the actual position to save ourselves time during that actual process here. When we look in for things like qualifications or the responsibilities here, we're going to see a lot more levels here, if you will. And the reason we're seeing more levels is that we're now not only seeing information that's required for this position, but we're seeing what was actually fed down or cascaded down from above. So we can see here competency models, right? Competency models that were included as part of the job, plus any additional competencies that are going to be unique to this position, kind of at a lower level here. And that continues on down with everything from skills and qualifications and everything along those lines. The goal here really just to show that manpower issue, or that manpower functionality, to be able to take all the different jobs, have there be some commonalities amongst them, but have each job still have its own unique characteristics. We can absolutely accommodate that and leverage that as part of the system. From there, we are then able to feed all that information here into really our organization. So I'm going to go ahead and do this from an organization chart view here, but we could break this down in a number of different ways. We talked about this just a second ago. Again, the government as a whole is kind of our top level entity here, kind of from a CEO perspective. And then each of the different ministries might have a different kind of, might have a different role kind of flowing down here. We can take a look at this here where, Jack Nolan here might be, heading up everything. And then our heads of our different ministries are going to be listed out below. As we continue down and we select these different options, one thing to note here is yes, we are selecting an individual at this point in time, but that individual resource is assigned to a role or to a job or a position within our organizational structure. This way, if we need to take an entire team, an entire department, an entire group, move them from one ministry all the way to a completely separate ministry, that's only one click on our end. We're able to take everything and take that role, that position, that job, and the reporting structure for that, and entirely move that whole structure from one area right to another with just a simple click of a mouse. If someone chooses to leave the organization, we're able to not replace and have to reroute and reconfigure the entire reporting structure all the way up the chain there because one person made a change. We're just going to fill that position, and all the requirements, all the hierarchy, all the workflows that would typically fall into that person's roles and responsibilities will just be available for them right when they first start the whole process here. Because we're not tying things to individual people, we're tying things to roles, to jobs, and to positions within kind of an organizational structure aspect here. So you can see there are some areas where there are no resources. And we still have to fill those positions here. But as we go down, there are individual people here that will roll up into that actual job or that position here that we can still kind of have everything operate as is. And of course, if there is no person in that actual role, we can have specific rules about how workflows get routed, where approvals need to go for time off, things like that. All that can be flown to the appropriate levels here, depending on, of course, the requirements. With this being said, and there being some roles that maybe don't have, or some positions that don't have, people backfilled into them, we want to take a look here as well at our succession. Now, before I jump over into our succession planning capabilities here, I did want to pause just for a brief minute to see if anyone had any questions on the structure or the organizational capabilities here. I'll take silence as no. So jumping into our succession capabilities, we see again, there are roles that don't have positions. How can we go about actually looking at that? We have a full succession capabilities here. We talked about career paths before. So taking a look at individuals from a career perspective that would be a logical next fit into that. We have the ability to leverage those talent pools that Desmond, we had talked about first thing, then people filled out general applications there. Again, there might be a great candidate right under our nose that we don't even realize might be a great fit. So being able to leverage that information. The actual succession plan in itself, our more formal way of going through this process here. So being able to come in and say, for our positions that are key positions, are the leaders of our different departments and teams and the overall kind of leadership within the government here, from a hired perspective, not necessarily elected perspective, but how are we planning to fill those roles should someone leave for various reasons here? So we can have these different succession pools. We could go ahead and look at a chart here. It's again traditional 9-box succession planning chart. We can identify people that we have felt were a good fit for this role and where they stand. Are there individuals that are consistently performing and based on that merit are a great fit for replacing our next general manager should and when they decide to leave? Are there people that are at risk for leaving the organization themselves due to performance issues, due to dissatisfaction with pay or leadership or a number of other options there. So being able to identify that and see where our existing performers lie, where our up and coming performers lie here, and being able to move people from step to step to see where, at any given time, where they might be a good fit or where they need to go. Taking a look further in here, how do we know that Brenda would be a good fit? Well, we're going to tie this back to those competencies, the skills, the qualifications, the responsibilities that an individual has as part of the general manager position that we just looked at here. So we see here a very high level view of that profile that Bonnie had showed earlier with some basic contact information, etc. We're able to see comments as well as status about this particular individual's status in this succession pool. They are confirmed and they are ready to take this role on should there be an opening here. We're able to see and take a look at, based on that role, take a look at different things based on their qualifications, based on what their career path has been. We're able to take a look at the actual profile from a succession perspective and identify where there are potentially areas where they have high potential here in terms of areas to overcome, or areas that are a large risk. There's some pay dissatisfaction at this point in time. Again, maybe there's a great pay increase should moving to a general manager, and that would eliminate any type of retention issue here. Bonnie had mentioned fit analysis earlier, and I want to bring it back to that here as well, because understanding how a person fits into a role based on their qualifications, based on that fit of what we've defined as roles, responsibilities, etc., is a key aspect as well. We want to make sure that when the time comes, they have enough of the intangibles to be able to be successful at that particular role. From a qualifications perspective, even going as far as a behavioral perspective if we wanted to go down that route. But being able to look and see, here are the competencies that are required. How does Brenda here fit those? Well, there are certain areas we've defined that she's a match. She matches up on teamwork and professionalism here, right? We need her to match up from a communications perspective to a level 2 as we've defined it. She's currently a level 1. Well, rather than have to worry about, staff or anyone trying to identify, well, what should we do? How can we get her more ready? The system's able to identify and say, listen, communication needs to be improved. Here's going to be a list of suggested activities from our learning and development course catalog that are going to help get this individual where they need to be. Now, as a manager, as an administrator, as whomever is in control of this, I can directly assign this information to Brenda and say, listen, we know you're unhappy with your pay. We have feeling that you're going to be a great fit for a general manager role, but to be able to really meet the requirements, you need to complete this training class or this development plan that Bonnie had talked about earlier. We can pick a specific day and time and say you have to do this particular class, or here's a training needs to be assigned virtually. Or if it's something that we say, we need you to complete this when you can, we can assign this as when it is available. Maybe Brenda here is going away on vacation or on leave, where she's not going to be able to complete this in the next 2 months. We'll have it there available for her to come and access and register for when she comes back. Upon completing that class, the system will automatically recognize her completion. It'll be able to increase her score here as well from that communications level from a 1 to a 2 based on the rules that we've assigned to that actual class there. And now she's going to be a better fit for this actual position should an opportunity arise. We saw Brenda here had some pay dissatisfaction as well. There are a number of ways we can handle that without necessarily having her move into a new position within the organization here. So there's a full compensation management functionality built into the solution. Number of different ways that we can leverage and manage that actual compensation, some of which are going to be based on the overall positions themselves. So we can assign essentially step and grade schedules. So based on things like length of time, performance scores, a number of different options there, we can define exactly how people are able to move through the organization, what their salary is going to look like at each step of the way based on their grade, based on their position, based on their status here, again, associate, junior, senior, etc. there. We're able to define the actual rates for that information. And then we're able to look at this really from a matrix perspective. We can take a look and say, kind of how does a certain individual fit? What is their salary supposed to look like, just as an example here? So we can see a level 4 associate is going to be making this much. Very easy to identify that. And how do they get to a level 5 or to a senior? Well, we have the ability to have automated progression rules based on their performance rating, each given performance review that they complete, or based on an average over a course of time, maybe a 3-year average of performance reviews. That's going to be able to identify and move them automatically up a step, a grade, something along those lines, based on the length of time that they've worked, either on a hourly basis, kind of moving up in smaller steps there, or on a general longer length of time. It's going to be, they have to be in a job for at least 12 months, 24 months, 5 years before they're eligible for any type of increase or anything along those lines. And then being able to assign that information and say, listen, when you meet this criteria, the system can automatically move them to that next step. And of course, notify everyone so that way we can account for that increased salary budget expenditure that we have at this point in time. If we need to do things in mass, we have that ability as well, where we can go ahead and take a look and actually assign here, do a mass pay rate change. So we can change pay rates for either everyone in the entire organization, or we can define some criteria here. We can do that effective date that Bonnie mentioned. We have the ability even to model this. What would it look like if we gave everyone a 4% increase in their salary? The thing though is that we're able to define this down to on an individual level if we wanted to, but we're able to define this based on groups. So this can very easily be anyone that is an associate job, anyone with this particular position, anyone who's got a tenure of more than 5 years with the government, or even that has more than 5 years within the Ministry of Health. That's going to be eligible for a 2% salary increase. You're able to create these groups within the solution that you can then tie and apply changes to. Again, any criteria, any different feasible option you could think of, you can create a group that's tied with that as the criteria. As people meet that criteria, they're automatically added to that group. If they no longer meet that criteria, they're automatically removed from that group as well. So it's a great way to set things up, keep it easier for you, and identify, listen, we need to give everyone within this particular, it's the time of year we give everyone in this particular ministry a salary increase. We're going to go ahead and do that. I can select that group in terms of eligibility, or as we saw, I can select things like a position, a job, the overall organizational unit details, everyone who reports up to a certain manager. I'm able to select that information. I'm able to identify in the new pay rate, either based on a flat amount or based on a percentage. And then I can, of course, submit that, of course, for approval. That will be routed and signed off on by the appropriate parties that you deem necessary. There are lots of options here from a compensation perspective to do increases. We can do this on an individual level and pretty much do the same action we just took on one particular individual, and of course have that routed up through the appropriate chain there. Now, all these changes that were taking place within the solution here, they're going to essentially affect things like payroll down the line. So we want to make sure that, like Paul had mentioned this, I believe one of the first things, that there's active work going on, and there's been successful integrations with SmartStream Payroll and Cloud Suite Human Capital Management, what we're looking at today. And yes, absolutely. That's what that Infor OS layer that we were taking a look at before, that integration layer, right? The underlying technology is making all that happen. Now, the frequency of that, what information we're going to look to pass, a lot of that will be determined by you all in terms of what you want to share. That's going to include those different disposition and pay codes for things like employee relations actions, where if there's someone that might be going to court or something along those lines that has a reduction in pay for a given period of time, we're able to identify that particular pay code, or as part of their actual profile, and have that sent over to the payroll system to be able to dock the appropriate amount of pay as we're going through. So there's a lot of options there as well to make sure that the SmartStream payroll system is receiving all the information it needs from the human capital management solution here as well. The last thing I wanted to touch on here is really going to be, with a couple minutes that we have left, because I want to leave time for questions before we run out here, is really on our analytics here. So we have the ability here, of course, any field of information within the solution is going to be reportable across. Any field of information in the solution is going to be searchable across. But we could take that a step further, and we can take that information and put some real real analytics behind it, and be able to actually view this information in a logical way, make it really simple and easy for the folks, especially at the higher levels of leadership within the government, to very quickly and easily identify relevant information for them for what they're really looking to do here as part of this. And that's where our analytics suite comes into play here. So out of the box, we deliver hundreds of standard reports that come available as part of the solution. So I'm going to go ahead and just click generally into our high-level analytics here. But you can see as we're loading this up, there is everything from general employee analysis to turnover information, compensation details here. I'll go ahead and expand this. We can take a look at information on job requisitions and our budget in terms of positions here. We also have the ability to go through and create custom dashboards as well. So if there's something that you're looking for to create very uniquely for an individual person, an individual department, team, an overall ministry here that they're going to need real-time access to data as it relates to HR, as it relates to budgeting information from CPM or from other systems that you leverage today. We're able to pull all that information in here as part of what we call a data lake. That data lake is going to then be able to essentially match information up, some information from human capital management, payroll data that's coming in, information from financial systems, be able to feed all that information and tie it all together to actually give you relevant reports here. So taking a look at the general headcount and what everything looked like from a year ago today, Riago here, if you will, and we're down about 1.35% in terms of our overall headcount here. We're able to see our turnover rate. We're able to see how many new hires we have in the past 12 months. We can take any of this information though that we can see. What's our job hierarchy look like? How many people are in each of these different positions, right? In these different jobs that we have. We can kind of drill into any of this though. So I can say, let me look at all my entry-level individuals here. Just by clicking on that entry-level box, what I'm able to do is essentially take a look at all the information that's on my screen here, and now I'm able to focus in specifically on all that entry-level information. All those individuals that are defined as entry-level people, we're able to see all their information right here. What their full-time employment status is. How long have they been with the organization? Is this their only job, or do they have multiple different positions that they might be working here, right? When did they actually start? When are they scheduled to retire? What is their employee ID? I'm able to see all that information. We'll see here at the top, I now have filters put into place. So I'm able to go through and filter this information down by any level of detail that I want to. So it's a really very powerful tool. It's taking all the information from within the Infor solution, from within your other solutions here, and giving you one centralized place to go to access that information, right? Turnover is always incredibly important as we go through anything, making sure we have people in the appropriate positions here. And yes, we have a general turnover report that we can see here. We can see this is broken down here based on the past 3 years. But we can, of course, take deeper looks. We could give it based on the current year, based on the past 4 years. I can look at all of our turnover ever that we have information for here. But I can kind of filter this down if I wanted to. I could take a look at people in terms of our new hires here. I could take a look at termination information specifically. We have dashboards, reports built for all that information that come right out of the box. The great thing, though, is as I come in here, I can go ahead and as I mentioned, start filtering down. So if I only wanted to see information for the Ministry of Transportation, I could go and select that from an actual organizational description, or from of course I don't have anything equal to that here, but I can go ahead and start filtering down based on those specific areas. Bonnie mentioned security roles before. We can tie that information into exactly who's logging in. So whomever is working for your Ministry of Tourism, we'll be able to have, if you wanted to, all they see the tourism ministry specific information. So turnover information specific for that department, specific for that team, specific for that overall ministry, and allow the larger level, the higher levels of leadership to be able to see everything across the various different avenues here. There's a lot of capabilities, a lot of options. The great thing, all of it can be exported right into PDF. It can be exported right into Excel if you wanted to. This way, if you need to do something else with it, you're more comfortable working in Excel, that's fine as well. That really wraps up the analytics aspect of everything. I know we've got about 5 minutes left or so in our scheduled time. I'm hoping we can use that time to answer any outline questions that anyone from the team might have at this point.
Thank you, Mark.
Hi.
Go ahead. I was just
Yeah.
going to ask whether people had any specific questions on any one section or in general, broader questions.
Okay. I have two questions. I'm not sure if I missed it, but with regards to the performance assessment, how easy it is to configure the questions for the performance assessments? That's my first question.
Okay.
And the second question has to do with integration because, as you know, we currently use SmartStream here for payroll. So how easy would it be to integrate our SmartStream with this solution, and what is required to do that integration?
Sure. Paul, I'm going to go ahead and take the performance question first, and then I'll kind of defer over to you and the Smart Solutions team to talk about integrations, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure. So configuring the actual performance review, I have kids, so I step on Legos. I did last night at about 2:00 in the morning, and that's how I like to think of our performance review capabilities. Because really, the actual forms that your managers are going to fill out for your employees would fill out about themselves. We're able to take that information, all they're just individual sections. We're able to create a new form, and then we're able to essentially pick which of these different sections that we want and basically combine that into one. Now, information like the core values and the competencies and skills tied to a position, that all lives on those jobs and positions that we talked about. So some of that would be a matter of fixing or editing information there, but creating the actual form, it's literally going through and picking which 4, 5, 10 different options you want and literally hitting create and being able to put that information in a form. And then to assign that, you would just use that same grouping capability that I was just talking about. This is the ministry of a specific department within the Ministry of Transportation that's going to get this particular performance review. That's who we're assigning this information to, and only to the manager for all those teams. The employees get something slightly different, and we're only assigning it to them. So it's a very simple process to create and assign the appropriate information.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, and hi, this is Paul. So let me just answer your question about the integration. So there's really two sets of integration points in terms of how the data is exchanged. One is HCM. The assumption is that HCM, of course, would be your system of record when it comes to the HR data, including the compensation. So the HCM application is maintained when we update records that, in most cases, of course, they have corresponding records in payroll. I'm not sure whether in the case of the government of St. Lucia, there are some people being paid through accounts payable, temporary workers or such. I know that's a common situation in many of the governments in the region. But if they do have a record in payroll, we can identify that and we can push those updates through, as Mark was pointing out, through Infor.OS. Infor.OS really is the underlying platform that's used to integrate Cloud Suite with really any number of applications. And those integrations can really be as complex or as simple, as needed by the integration points. I can tell you in the case of SmartStream, we're limited to the batch load APIs that exist in SmartStream. The reason I point out that Infor.OS can get a lot more sophisticated than that is because, with a more modern application that's running on web services, we can really have, in effect, real time, as close to real time, split second real time integration between those apps. And that may happen, in the future with some other third party app. But we're limited to the batch load programs with SmartStream being, really a late 1990s technology. So we can collect the data and run those updates really as often as you want. It's really the scheduled batch job that we're really talking about within SmartStream. That's the ultimate driver. So maybe that's going to be an overnight refresh, or that's something you do during the day when you're working on some kind of mass updates. If there's any kind of org structure change or change, and because of some new union agreement, something like that needs to happen immediately. Jobs in SmartStream are on demand, so we can do it on a schedule basis where there's small drips of changes of addresses, things like that, or bank accounting, information that might be used for direct deposit. Or if we have something major, we can do it, on demand, whenever you need to do it so you can validate the results. Now that gets data into payroll. Of course, we've been showing you here how with employee self-service, you can actually take a look at the data coming back from payroll. So that's really the other direction. That's us extracting the data from SmartStream Payroll after the payroll's run. And we map that data again through Infor.OS back to the employee self-service records. You can imagine there is a next generation payroll that's it's in its first year, and it's focused in its first year on the U.S. market. It will be coming, globally, but in the interim, payroll's still probably the least sexy of applications out there. It's really doing major calculations, so we can continue to have SmartStream Payroll run like it's always been run, and as really a large calculator in a sense, and have that data pushed back to the employee records on self-service so that employees can get, the benefit of seeing that, in one place with all of the history for every payroll that would ever be run. I don't know if you're still printing pay stubs. That's common for a lot of people still on SmartStream Payroll, but this would also then get the government in a position where it was 100% digital. Unless there's some legal or reason why you need to have those paper stubs, which is questionable in a time of COVID. This is your opportunity to actually go 100% digital. We can push all of that back. There's really no need for paper in the payroll process whatsoever, unless for some reason, that's a part of your union agreement that people get those, or that there's some people who have the choice of electing, not to have a direct deposit payroll. So I hope that answers your question. We're familiar with it. We can certainly even show you at some convenient time, it working, because we've developed that. In fact, we're in a proof of concept right now with your neighbor and the government of Grenada, doing a lot of these things, as a sample for them. And so, at a future point, I'm sure we could show you what we've been doing ourselves to see how that would work. And perhaps there's even a scope for you to connect with the government of Grenada to discuss, what they're doing.
Okay, thanks. I think that's it for me. I don't know if anybody else has any further questions.
I know we just did analytics, but I'm sorry, I got a call. I'm just wondering, did you show any specific reports, or indicated which reports you could get from the system as already configured, and how easy it is to modify or create new ones?
Sure. So again, reports that come standard, we can send you a full list here as well. But they're it's well over 100 that come standard, and they range in everything from general HR analytics through management analytics, employee compensation information, requisition. They all essentially live on different dashboards here that are kind of grouped based on, again, some pre-configured capabilities. So information about turnover, information about details, internal transfers, etc. here. Again, these essentially are their reports as they really kind of exist at this point. Modifying them is easy. It could be, to drill into any of them, we could literally click on the actual report there, and it will modify everything else on that dashboard. So I just clicked on one for employee referral here. Now it's giving me turnover rate for entry-level employees that only came from employee referrals here. Modifying any of these is simple as well. It's just a matter of changing the filters to kind of dictate essentially what you need. And then you do have the ability, and it would be a much longer conversation here than I think we have time for today, to be able to go in and actually create any of these from scratch. We take a look at the I hate to use the word raw data, but we take a look at the core information. You're able to essentially drag and drop fields of that information into different report capabilities here, pick how we want that information displayed, lists, graphs, change the colors, etc., and then we'd be able to actually publish that information. So really, anything that's delivered is point and click to modify or filter on, and then creating things from scratch, very simple. It's drag and drop capabilities as well, and it's pretty intuitive.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if at this point, HR, DPS, PS, you have any further questions or that you want to raise?
Well, I certainly want to point out again that we are recording this, and we will set up the landing page for everybody that attended, and that will give you the ability to go through each of these sections again. I'm sure there's been a huge amount of information shared in this last 2 hours, and there's a lot that you'll want to digest and think about, and I'm sure as a result questions will percolate up. So that's certainly normal, expected, and we're happy to respond to any of those that come back. And I also recognize that it may be necessary to dig down deeper on any one of these topics as you go through doing your gap analysis to identify your core requirements and where they're being addressed and where there are gaps that you're looking for a solution to address. On the technical side, again, we focus from a business standpoint here. We touched here and there on the technology like we just did with the integration, but we do find in our experience that it's often helpful to have a second really pure technical discussion, because there are always going to be not just questions about exactly how we handle, modifying or building net new reports, but, issues around security. And I'm sure you've all got questions about, well, how will this work in the cloud? What does that mean in terms of, my integration with the network? There's a number of things we haven't touched on, except lightly, about how the workflow works. Workflow is substantially improved over what it was in SmartStream. And in fact, in the world of HR, the workflow wasn't really very strong in SmartStream compared to the financial systems. And it's extremely robust here. We've got a document management system that's included. So there's a lot of things on the platform side that, again, on a separate conversation, it might be helpful if you gave us, call it 30, 45 minutes plus questions. We just go through all of those so that you're completely comfortable about, what you get included, why it's relevant, how that's going to help you, address real business issues. So that could be a next step. We'll leave that, with you to consider. And then again, I'm sure at some point you'll want to get a sense of what it means in terms of training up a project team. How do you handle the migration? Of course, there's data that's in SmartStream and payroll, but there's also, I'm sure, a lot of data that's outside of those two that maybe even be, on paper or scattered. So what does that mean in terms of an actual implementation? Where do you start? Prioritization of different modules. We're happy to go through, that kind of roadmap discussion if and when, that's appropriate. So I'll make sure that you've got my contact details, and we'll pull together the landing page within the next couple of days. And then please let me know how you'd like to handle any next steps.
Thank you very much, Paul. As indicated, this was just an introductory session to kind of get an idea of what the platform looks like and what the functionality is as compared to the existing SmartStream. But definitely you will be hearing from us in terms of having that technical discussion and discussing the way forward to guide any decisions that we make. If I can ask, in terms, because I think somebody mentioned Grenada.
Yes.
Is Grenada are they starting from scratch, or do they already have SmartStream and they're now doing an upgrade? Just out of curiosity.
Well, within the OECS, there's 6 countries that have the HR payroll, just so you know. Yourselves, St. Vincent, Grenada, Dominica, they were the first 4 who started, and St. Lucia was, in fact, the first country, focused initially, of course, on the financials, but as part of the original licensing, it included the HR. Since that time, Guyana, Belize, and actually early on, the government of Barbados also licensed SmartStream HR payroll. So on top of that, I think there's Turks and Caicos. So altogether, 10 on the SmartStream plus another government Bahamas on a different platform. Now, in the case of HR, I can tell you HR, being very candid, HR has aged probably worse than the financials. Accounting, GAAP accounting and IFRS accounting haven't fundamentally changed over the last 20 plus years, but SmartStream was written, I'm being really candid here, it was written in a pre-internet world, pre-social media, at a time before everybody expected to log on to a website to deal with the applicant process. And some web add-ons have been made for SmartStream, but Infor has taken, I believe, the right decision in addressing this as a major rewrite, keeping, key areas that you recognize like jobs, positions, how it's organized, expanding concepts around workflow and the rest. But some things really just had to be fundamentally rewritten. So what you see, of course, for recruiting is completely different than SmartStream, far more robust and far more in tune with the time. And then they pushed the envelope really into areas that we just really touched on today. For example, with talent science, being able to be on the cutting edge of actually, mapping, the personalities and skills of individuals against, specific, jobs and positions. It really truly becomes state of the art, and that's one of the reasons Infor now is recognized, globally as having a solution that is always rated in the top three. It could be one, it could be third, but it's always there, and that's again has to do with that. So I don't think you're alone. I think that's probably the message I'm trying to give you here, that Barbados has been looking cautiously themselves where they go over the last couple of years. We've been working with them. They just went live on the financials and procurement just at the beginning of October. So they have all of the financials and procurement live for the government as of just a few weeks ago. But the next phases are to roll out Cloud Suite for the financials to four of their statutory boards, including revenue, Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and public housing. And we're hoping, if it wasn't for COVID, everything's a little challenged right now with COVID and budgets. But certainly the HCM was going to be part of that next phase that theoretically was going to happen next year. I'm not sure that that's guaranteed by any stretch now, but they're very close to moving forward. I will tell you another interesting point is payroll is just not on anybody's priority list. So this integration, we've been focusing very closely on this with Infor to make sure that we've got a seamless transition so that we keep payroll intact, doing what it always does well, and focus on the gaps that are really all on the HR side, and keep that stable so that we've got the integration we need, so that the Department for Public Administration is always in a position to manage the key areas. Payroll was already doing what it was supposed to do. So we've got that working. The proof of concept in Grenada, it's a short one. I'll tell you, it just started, literally. It's going to last about 60 days of effort before we get a result that touches on most of the key pain points for them. We anticipate that being early December. And then the government is taking a decision about, what it does in terms of its financial year is different from yours, their calendar. So they're making a decision, with respect to next year's financial year starting in January. So that's their timeline. It's pretty compressed. I think all of us wish we had an extra month or so. But I think we're going to do some good things there. And I know, your close relationship with them. I have to think there's an opportunity for you to compare notes.
Yes, thank you very, very much for that, Paul. Yes, I guess we will be having some further discussion both internally, and I guess we will be in contact most definitely.
Well, we look forward to that. Again, I'll share my contact details with everyone, and I'll keep you posted in terms of the landing page, and we'll continue to augment that with any additional information we provide you, not just presentations, but any PowerPoints like this one or other white papers, etc. We'll keep them all in one place. That way you have a library you can share with whoever you need to on your side.
No problem. Thank you very, very much. Thank you to Mr. Ashford for arranging, and thank you to the team for attending. So we will be in contact, and thanks very much, Paul and your team.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about the future of Infor.
Definitely. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.